Hey there, Shadows of Brimstone fans. Aaron Lovejoy here for Miniature Monthly, and today I'm going to be assembling the all-gender heroes from City of Ancients. These models are made from delicious chocolate. Nope, I mean plastic. They're made from plastic, and they require sharp, pokey tools to put them together. So that being said, if you're a little kid under the age of 18, don't do any of this. Get your parents' help. If you're an adult and you have a problem cutting yourself with sharp, pokey tools, phone a friend. Don't phone me, but phone a friend and get them to help you do this. That being said, here we go. These are basically single piece models, except for the Bandita, who has a hat. And I think I'll put this together normally. It just goes on the back of her shirt here. But if you don't want to put it on there, you can totally do that. It's sculpted to look like it should look. It's not just flat. But I'm thinking maybe on my Bandita, I'm going to cut the hair off and put the hat right on top. So she's actually wearing it, just like the Bandito. But we've got the female gunslinger, female U.S. Marshal, and the piano player. So the counterpart to the saloon girl. And as you can see, oh, these new plastics are super, super detailed and cool. So without further ado, I'm going to show you how to put this together. First things first, you're going to need some tools. I got a pair of God hand clippers here. These clippers are super sharp, super nice. They also tend to break. The tips break off of them very easily because they're so sharp, but mine still work great, so I'm going to have those. You can just use regular plastic sprue cutters if you want, but I prefer the God hands. I've also got several knives. Knives are super sharp. Be sure to be very careful when you're using knives. If you're a little kid, don't use it. Have your parents do it. If you're a parent, don't cut your finger off. That's all I'm saying. So be very careful with sharp implements like this. So I've got a round tipped knife. This is for scraping like curved areas. Very nice. I've also got a scalpel with a round tip on it, and that is also for scraping areas. I've got a file for filing down stuff. This works very good. It's the beveled edge one, so it's beveled on one side, flat on the other. Very cool. And then I've got a regular X-Acto knife. So let's get started with cutting this thing apart. It's pretty simple. I'm going to take my God hands clippers. You can just use regular sprue cutters if you want. And I'm going to clip as close to the body as I can. Now, if you're using normal clippers, sprue cutters, you might clip a little further away so that you don't have any tearing of the plastic. But these God hand clippers, bam, they cut like butter. So I'm just going to get all this done up. So it always pays to take like a closer look at the models themselves and just make sure that you do not have, that you're not clipping off something that's not supposed to be clipped off. So I will say that 45 times, but I always see online people that are like, oh, I clipped the foot off, or I clipped part of this, his axe or something. You do not want to do that. Just get all these like that. All the way around, take your time, pop these bad boys off. Always pays double check these sprues, because you never know when something like this might just look like a tab on the sprue, but maybe it's a pouch or something. So you just don't want to be throwing away stuff that you're not supposed to throw away. So we'll do a double check here. Move these models out of the way. Sprue is clean. We're good to go. So I typically, myself, play the Bandito or Bandita, and I did not have the Bandita model until now, and so that's pretty cool. I'm really, really excited to play with her, because she's kind of cool looking. Very, very good model. Now, you're going to want to clean these tabs off. There's typically 4 or 5 tabs for each figure. Again, being careful not to bend a gun and break it off or something like that. This particular guy, his gun's going to be a little bit fragile, and the axe, the handle of the axe will be a little bit fragile. It's not super fragile. I mean, you can push on it, but if you're clipping off those things, you could easily push too hard and break off the barrel of the gun, which would really, really suck. All right. Now, if that's as far as you want to go, boom, your model's clean. That's good enough for you. Take a base, take some glue. I want to be able to break my models back off the base when I'm done painting so I can put them onto a different, like a more display base or something. So even with my gaming stuff, I'm always putting some sort of different kind of base on. So I'm going to put a little drop of glue on his foot. And if we look a little bit closer, you can see that's just a little drop. It's not a whole lot. Fix him to the middle of the base. Now, if you're not planning on doing anything special for the bases, I mean, you'd be done after this. So, and then I take my Instaset, put a little of that on there so it dries instantly. The other reason I do this is because when I'm done painting him, I've only got it glued on one side. I can easily pop him off the base because that Instaset makes the bond, the super glue bond, very brittle. If you don't want him to come off, glue both feet with a liberal amount of glue and don't use the Instaset. Set him on there, hold him till he sticks, and then set him down and let him dry on his own. And you will have a model that is ready to go, ready to play with, and pretty strongly stuck to your base. I use super glue. You can use plastic glue, and that's a little bit different. One, it stinks really bad. That's why I don't use it. I get headaches. And two, you got to put a little bit on both sides of the model. So you'd put a little bit, like say on the Bandita's foot, and a little bit on her base. So usually what I do to do that, I put it on her feet, press it down on the base, let that get on the base, put a little bit more on her feet, let it set for a second, few minutes, like maybe 10 seconds, 20 seconds, and then put it back on because that gives the time to start melting the plastic. You put the other part on and then let it set together and then let it set to dry for an hour or so, and that will give you a nice strong plastic bond. And what that does is it melts the plastic on both sides and makes it literally the figure is one piece with the base at that point. So it's a little bit more permanent. I like the ability to be able to pop this guy off. Boom, when I'm done painting, I can pop him off and put him on one of my cool bases. So, that being said, you're good to go. Quick and easy steps. The Bandita obviously would get her hat back here, and it would go on the back of her like that. Just glue it on and you're done. All right, that's it. If your goal was to get the models off of the sprue with the minimal amount of work, you are done. The models are off the sprue, the tabs are cleaned up, and they are glued to the base. Now you're ready to paint these, or even if you don't want to paint them, you're ready to play the game. But if you're looking at doing a little bit more, watch the rest of this video. If you want to take it a step further and shave off all these pesky mold lines, it really isn't that much extra work. It is extra work, but it's not that much extra work. So I'm going to show you, for those of you who want to go the extra mile, we need to scrape off this excess plastic here where it attached to the sprue. And I'm trying to be careful. I just dug into her leg. Awesome. So, do that leg. She's got a little bit on her elbow. So first thing I do is I get all that extra sprue off. Where's the other parts? On the bottoms of her feet, which don't matter as much, but you want those feet to be flat because that's what interacts with the base. And if there's nubs down there, it is going to make it a bad connection and she'll probably break off all the time, which is super, super annoying. All right, so we got that. Now I'm going to start following this mold line. Now, when models are created, they have two halves of the mold, and they press together like that, and there'll be a little bit of a mold line in between the two parts. So you can see right here, there's a mold line that goes all the way down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the edge of my blade and just sort of scrape it on the side. I'm not cutting, I'm scraping. And I'm going to be kind of light with my touch so that it doesn't cut away too much. I want a rough surface. I can also take a file. I've got this file that's flat on one side and beveled on the other. I really like it because the beveled side can kind of go in these areas that are curved up like this. But then I can file the bottom side of her holster there. And for stuff like this, I just kind of, I don't want to file in a straight line because that will make a flat area. So I just kind of keep it curving. There we go. Sometimes if it's a little hard area to get into, I just sort of, like I'm carving it, but I'm not really. I'm just scraping it with that edge of the blade. Do the bottoms of the dress. Even though technically you may not be able to see that, it's still a good idea to get it because someone might see it and then they'll go, hey, you missed a mold line. I always figure if you're going to take the time to take the mold lines off, you might as well take them off fairly well, or at least to the best of your ability. Now, a lot of times, if I'm just doing this just for gaming, I will take the mold lines off. I'll do what's called a light mold line removal, and I just kind of take the ones off that you can see really easily. Like maybe the bottoms of the arms I wouldn't care about, the tops of the arms, you know, maybe this bottom side of this arm, because you can see it. Go across her fingers, her gun. Top of the gun is always tricky because it's got a sight up there and it's got a trigger at the back. So if you're doing resin figures, a lot of times you don't have to worry about the trigger at the back because it breaks off in the mold. They never have them. But these plastic models, these models are pretty legit. They've got all that extra detail. Arm. Even if you can't see the mold line, just assume that it's there, especially on these upper parts of the arms and stuff. You know that that mold line goes right down the middle of that barrel. It'll go down the middle of her arm. So I just scrape it away. And then what I usually do is once I go and prime it, that will show me all the parts of the mold lines that I missed. If I don't care too much, I just don't worry about it. If I do care, I will go back in and do the same thing, scrape away or file away the primer and the mold line, and then reprime it. So primer never lies. Primer will find all your mold lines for you. So I used to be really frustrated when that would happen, but I learned that that's the best way to find your mold lines if you can't physically see them. So I would not worry about it one bit. Okay, so she's all done. We'll put her hat on. We've got to scrape off her hat. So I always try to be careful with the hats because you don't want to scrape like a flat spot into it. People will do this file, and I'm kind of rolling the file over the circumference of the hat here, the circle of the hat, that brim. You can also file, the top and bottom are completely flat, so if you just file those first, get off those little nubs, and then file the top, spin it around. Perfect. Take a little glue. I'm going to put it right in the center. Actually, I'm going to put it a little bit on her hair. That center of the back, because I think that's where it's going to hit the most. And luckily, this doesn't look like it has any top or bottom, so I'm just going to stick it on like that. And I'll have it kind of leaned back and cocked on her belt there. Perfect. And I'm going to spin the hat around. It filed a little bit funny on that side, so I put that at the bottom, and nobody will know the difference. Except for you guys. There. Got that. Go back in, file a little bit better. So the beauty of these one-piece models is there are no gaps to fill. So once you've got that cleaned like that, you are done. You are good to go, and you are ready to paint. Just go around and try to knock off whatever extra plastic little shavings and stuff that you see. Sometimes you can take a brush, kind of wipe it all away. Make sure that's all gone. Make sure you get these shoes. Shoes are an easy one to forget. But make sure, like she has some fancy shoes on, make sure you don't shave away any detail that you don't want to shave away. And then that mold line always comes down and then it goes forward on the shoe. So that side, the inside of her leg, you can see a little bit of a mold line there. Scrape that away. Blow off that excess. This bottom part that I kind of did a bad job carving away that sprue, I'm gonna smooth it out with my file. Again, not pushing real hard, just kind of going right along there like that. All right, perfect. All right, so now she will get the same treatment. I want to actually file her feet flat. They're a little bit rounded on the bottom. I do this with a lot of feet, not just these plastic models. I'll file those feet so they're good and flat like that, and then that way they have a good surface to adhere to whatever I'm gluing them to. Models like this, it's going to be really hard to put a pin in there because the back of her foot's so thin, and that's the only place that you can put a pin. So if you can get away without pinning it, all the better. My glue is getting clogged. I'll pop that off, and there we go. So I'm just going to put it on one side of this, put her down on the piano player's base, take my Instaset, put it on this side, that side, really good. Hold on to it, and then I'm going to let that set. I'm going to glue this dude back on. If you popped them off and you got to put them back on, be sure to clean the glue off the bottom of the foot, because it will create like a little bubble there as well. If you just put more glue on it, it's not going to hold very well. So, all right, put that on like that. Get him on here centered. Even if you're going to put him on a different base, it's nice to center him because that gives you good practice for always having your model centered on the base. Now, sometimes you put the model further back, depending on, if it's some cool custom display base and he's standing on a step, it's okay to put him back further. But for something like this, just putting him right in the middle is perfect. He's ready to go. Oh, that's going to be fun. So these last two, we'll do the U.S. Marshal and the Gunslinger and get them all cleaned up and ready to go. We'll have the heroes or the alternate heroes of City of Ancients. So when you're cleaning the hats like this, some of the hats are flat across the top, so you can just file them, burp, 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 and it flattens out. Other ones have that divot in the middle, and sometimes it's just it's just a little bit. But if they have that, you want to keep that there. So this particular hat, I think, has a little bit of one. If not, I'm going to give her one. And then we'll do the sides of the hat, the brim here. Probably want to use my rounded knife here because I can get in there. I'll do both sides. I do the rounded knife blade because it has less of a surface area to scratch the model or to scrape the model. And for something like this, I think it's just a little bit better. So I'm not scratching up the whole brim of the hat. And you want to get the underside of the hat. Side of the hat. Side of the hat's probably easier with the file. Just be careful because she's got hair out here. So we'll kind of file that hair a little bit. Places that are really hard to get to, I'll use the tip of my knife. And not really cut, but scrape. Sort of scratch that away. This and basically work my way down the model. For this one, I don't think there's anything too weird with this one. Just gotta get that gun. I'm using that sawing action like we did before in the Harbinger video, because then I can go kind of slow and just slowly pull it down and it cuts away that plastic without like being too aggressive and cutting myself. Be sure to really check the inside of the legs because sometimes that mold line seems like it would go right down the center and it doesn't. So just double check. As soon as it rolls on one edge or the other of the leg, just kind of go in there, hit it from different angles so you know for certain that you got it. So this bit of hair, I may have been a little overzealous in my cut, or it just sort of cut off, made it a little flat right there. So I'm going to take my file here and shave it back into sort of a roundish fashion like the hair that it should be. And then I can always just paint the strands of hair back in there if I want to. It all depends on how the end, when I'm painting it, what I need to do. So it's kind of lower on the hair, so I'm probably not going to have as much detail as maybe I'd have up here, because you want your most amount of detail when you're painting to be at the top of the model, or the area that you want people looking at the most. So if you have more detail up high, if you have really detailed hair down low and then up high it's just kind of it's going to actually put a lot of emphasis on the bottom parts of your model, and you don't want that. You want people looking at the head. These are the parts that really kind of suck when you're cleaning. It's like all this hair. Gotta get both sides, get the mold lines off both sides. Now I say that, it sucks cleaning it, which it does, but I love the way they sculpted it because it's so dynamic and it gives so much life to the miniature. I would rather have them do it this way and then give me a little bit more work on the cleanup, but have a cooler looking model at the end. So it is what it is. Cooler stuff takes more time to clean up. It's just the way it goes. Alright, got that. Now, I'm going to show you on this model. I will show you how to pin it if you want to paint like I do with the model on a cork. So I need to put this pin right up through the leg like that. It's barely going to make it. So I need to put this right in the middle of the heel basically. And this is why, like, if you see on models like this, actually her heels are probably okay, but the Bandita, she had little high heels, and it doesn't work quite as well. I mean, you either have to get a smaller pin and a smaller drill bit, or just don't pin those ones at all. But I'm going to put this right in the center of the heel like this. And then I'll turn it sideways. I think it could go forward a little bit. Centered. Then I'm going to push it in and wiggle it a little bit, and you'll get a little bitty pilot hole. I take my drill bit, make a little bit bigger pilot hole. I'll take a look at that, and it looks like it's a little bit more on this side of the model, so I'm going to push it that way. So I'm going to take my drill bit, put it straight up and down like this, but then turn it a little bit like that. And that will start drilling it in the direction I want, and then I put it up straight. And that's pretty much centered. So drilled over this way, then bring it up straight and straight down in. So I usually only pin on one foot, on one leg. And we want to go, always be looking at your drill bit, the orientation, which way it's going. You want to go right up in here. You see that leg's not much wider than the hole I'm drilling, so gotta be real careful. If we go outside of the foot, pull it back, we can put a little putty in there and fix it. But what I'm hoping is that we don't have that problem. I don't have to go super high. I mean, you don't have to go all the way up into the thigh or something. You just need to go maybe a 1/4 inch up. I keep pulling my drill bit out and getting rid of all the plastic in the bit. So that's about 1/8 of an inch. That may be good enough. I'm going to look at it from different angles. You should be able to tell if it's straight going up through the leg. So I'm putting a little bit of pressure pushing it that way, but not tons and tons. Because one, you don't want the drill bit to break. I've had that happen and it's stuck into my finger. That hurts. But two, you don't want to be pushing so hard and then you accidentally go through the model, through the leg, and you have a bunch of damage to the sculpt. So go that far. I think this is probably good enough. Yeah, I think that's good. So I'm going to check it with my paper clip. Most paper clips nowadays have this little plastic coating on them, and you can't leave that plastic coating on. So what I do is I take these pliers that have sort of a flat head on it, and I will straighten out my paper clip, or at least part of it. And then if I just clamp those pliers closed on the curve, it starts bending it back straight. Once I get it like that, I can take it. I'm holding onto it really tightly, and I'm going to spin this paper clip around. And that will basically break the plastic, and I can pull the plastic sheath off. No problem. And just take this, make sure that it fits in there good. It's about the depth. Take some glue. Now, if you're going to leave this in to actually pin it to the base, which I think I will do, I'm just going to let it dry this way. But if I want to be able to take it out later, I'll use my Instaset, I'll use my Instaset stuff right here, and that will give me a brittle bond in there. It will dry instantly. It will stick, no problem. But when I want to go take this out again later, I can again take my pliers, grab it, and just twist the figure. You don't want to pull out, because if you just try to pull it out, it'll never come out. But if you just twist it, it will break the bond of the glue in there, and you can pull the paper clip out. So, really cool. From there, I just cut it off about a 1/2 inch below. Usually I put it on the outer edge. If I don't already have a hole drilled in there, I will drill a new one. Or if it's in the wrong spot. Doesn't need to go super deep, just enough. I'll grab this, I'll put her in like that. And a lot of times I will just take my pliers and push it down like that. That's about as deep as I want it. Perfect. And if I want her to be standing straight up and down while I paint, I can bend that a little bit. I think that is perfect. There we go. All right. Very, very cool. I'm going to glue this other model on. Now we'll be done with this squad. And this is basically how you can clean and assemble any model that is a single piece model or single-ish piece model. Maybe I'll put a little dip on both sides of this girl's foot. Put her in the middle. Zip kick it so I can take it back off. There you go. In no time at all, I've got 4 models ready to fight down in the mines. All right, so your alternate gender heroes from City of Ancients should be built, should be on their bases, and they should be ready to paint. And hopefully you still have all your fingers. All right? Remember, phone a friend if you have problems with Poke Tools. If you're looking at instruction on miniature painting, some tutorials, we've got lots of tutorials over at Miniature Monthly. www.patreon.com/Miniature Monthly. We've also got online courses at miniaturemonthly.com. We've got you covered on your miniature painting learning, so join us today.